Everything we do impacts the environment in some way. Whether we drive a car down the street and it gives off emissions and has an impact, or you eat something and it also has a different kind of emission and impact on the environment. The environment is impacted either in a good way, a bad way, or could be even in a controlled way. Well, that's what we're going to learn about today on Galileo's Universe. What does it mean to be environmental, and what is a footprint? Today on Galileo's Universe, we have a very special guest, Greg, who is probably Orlando's most environmentally friendly person. And he is here to talk about this environmental footprint. So tell us, what does that mean, and what do we have to do to really have less of a footprint? And tell us more about footprints.
Well, I can explain that a little with a demonstration. If you step around here,
great.
Help me with the sand. Footprint is not normally something associated with the environment. However, we can demonstrate that right here. If we have the sand represent the Earth, and my big foot represents my impact on the Earth, the resources and how I might damage it or litter upon it, I can show you how I have an impact by stepping into the sand. Now, I have a pretty big foot, and so that symbolically means that I've got a pretty big expanse of things that I might damage the environment or use its resources and so on. So when you pull out, you see that I do have a footprint. Now, some people, however, don't care much for the environment. So even though they might be environmental in the same way that I am with my shoe, as far as the quantity of items, they might be doing a whole lot worse. They might just be polluting and littering and not recycling and so on. And if that's the case, symbolically, they really make an impact upon the Earth. And they dig down, and you can see the problem. Now, to fix the problem, you have a whole lot more of the sand symbolically to straighten out. So one of our questions we're going to tackle here is, how can we reduce our environmental footprint? How can we make a smaller footprint on the planet? And this is what this episode is about, to show you some of these different ways.
So really the footprint is really just a way to represent our impact on the environment.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I was just showing you two footprints. Well, the Earth has 6.7 billion people on the Earth, and that has a huge impact when you multiply those little footprints. Well, if you took all 6.7 million people and put them in a nice crowded room like a party, it would only take up half the size of Rhode Island. But what most people don't realize is that each one of us use about 5 acres, or about 5 football fields, worth of resources to plant our food and to find our oil and so on. That's a pretty big impact. When you multiply that out, we are not what is called sustainable. So I'm going to show you what sustainability means here. Basically, it's what we use up is being replenished at the same rate that we use it, and we get a nice cycle going. Well, that balance has tipped, and we're going to show it here. What we have is a bottle of water, and right now we have a whole bunch of resources represented by the water in the bottle being the Earth. Down here there's little holes, so when I open up one of these holes, we start using these resources. Now, these resources can be reused and replenished, so Mike is going to demonstrate.
Okay, so I'm going to start to replenish, right? So
right.
They're coming in, and then I go ahead and drop in. Okay, this is pretty easy. I can do this.
Now we have a line right over here.
So here's the line. Uh-oh.
And that represents sustainability. That means what's going out is the same amount that's coming in. However, as more and more people are on the planet and we're more and more wasteful, we use more resources.
This isn't real fair, because it's going in 2 different directions.
Well, this is the state of our planet currently. We are using up resources faster than we can replenish them, or the Earth can replenish itself. Now, there's many different ways that we can do that. I think it's a lost cause at this point.
I think it is, you're right.
The point is right now at our current usage rate, we need 1.3 Earths to sustain ourselves. We only have one Earth. As far as we know, that's the only sustainable, livable planet for humans.
So you say that there's we've got 1.3 Earths, but what do we need to do to get below 1 Earth so that we can somehow conserve the 1 Earth we've got?
Exactly. Well, as I say, we need to turn this puppy around. And one of the ways that we can do that is through recycling, reducing, and reusing. So I'm just going to use the example of these bags. Everybody goes to the store, you get these bags. Well, the first best thing to do is reduce. If you don't use these bags at all, that's one step better for the environment.
So it's really not like saying, oh, reduce.
Well, it's going to get squished up in the landfill one way or another,
Okay.
so that's not a very good point, though. So one way you can combat that is to get a permanent cloth type bag. Now, some people say, oh, it probably took a whole lot more electricity and resources to make this bag than a plastic bag, and they're absolutely right. But the tip point is at 11 uses. So if you use this bag 11 times, that will negate or equal the use of the plastic bags,
Okay.
which is great. Additionally, you don't even have to use a bag. As I say, if you bring a couple items to the counter, why can't you take a couple items to the car? Just simple math there. So that is reduce. The next possible thing, the best thing to do is reuse. So if you do have the bag and you don't have a permanent bag, well, reuse them. You can still bring it to the grocery store and use it a few more times before it breaks. So you get extra use out of it. And lastly is recycle. Recycling is when you take a product and melt it down or do something with it back to an elemental form and make something new out of it. Well, some folks in Colombia have a project that helps actually cotton-top tamarins, which is kind of unique, but they have lots of these bags flying around their environment and in their habitats where these cotton-top tamarins are. So they're going, well, we got to get these out. They mistake it for food and they get trapped in them. What these villagers have done is they've collected the bags, and now what are they going to do with them? Well, they don't have a standard recycling plant there, so they have come up with a way to cut these into strips, and then they crochet them into these mochila bags.
Very nice.
They sell them, the money goes back to the village, so it's a great win-win for everybody. Recycle, reduce, and reuse. But the proper order that most people don't get is reduce. Always try to reduce first, then try to reuse it, and if all else fails, then recycle.
And the recycle doesn't necessarily mean you turn it back into what originally came from. It could be something like this. It could be recycled into a very different product.
Exactly. This is borderline because you had a bag and made it into another bag, but the thing is that you broke it down into an elemental strip of plastic and made it into something else that's useful. It's great business. One of the most popular recycled items is paper. So we have a demonstration here where we can show you how to make some of your own paper.
Okay, so what is this?
That's just standard shredded used paper.
Okay.
Don't do this with paper that's never been used before. Always make sure it's already used.
All right, so we put some in there.
Put some in there.
Now, I got a question. Is this something that the kids could do at home?
Yes, with parental supervision.
Okay, why?
Well, as we probably can imagine, it will make a huge mess unless you do it right.
Okay.
Additionally, there's sharp parts in a blender and electrical appliances, so it's always good to watch out. So.
Oh, we need water in here, correct?
Yes, indeed. So
okay,
pour
so
a
pour
little
some
bit
water.
of water in.
Okay, was that enough?
Well, that's enough to start with. We're going to start small. Just turn on your blender for a little bit.
Very cool.
What you're doing is you're breaking down the fibers. We'll let it go for quite some time, but this is what it's going to look like in the end. This is pulp, it's called. And you break down the paper into little tiny fibers, and we're going to, in the paper making process, realign those fibers and make some more of our paper. So what you need is a screen of some sort. We happen to put it in a frame, and we've already poured our pulp in here. So put the paper in here, the frame in here, you pull up, you get a layer of the pulp, you come over to your paper towel and pat it down.
Pat it down, okay.
And once you get it all patted, you come back with a blow dryer and dry it fully. And when you're all done, you wind up with your own paper.
Welcome back. So we've already learned that we can help reduce the size of our footprint by doing some of these reducing, reusing, recycling. So Greg, what else can we do?
Well, there's actually a subset of recycling when you have items that are biodegradable. So we happen to have a little demonstration here.
So like this, I've got plastic or styrofoam peanut that comes in packing materials, and we'll put some water in there and I stir it, and well, quite frankly, nothing happens because it's made out of styrofoam.
Not biodegradable.
That's right. But there are peanuts that are made out of corn. cornstarch. Look the same, they function the same, but when I stir these, they actually start to do something different. I'm going to put a little more water in there, but you'll already see the effect that they are starting to
biodegrade.
All right. So if that's the case, then what else can we do that gets along in this direction?
Well, making products out of biodegradable materials is beneficial in some cases, because if it happens to blow out your window and winds up in nature, it will degrade like this and not have an impact. Some landfills actually like biodegradation like this because it helps create a gas called methane, which they can capture and use as fuel. So in some cases it's very good. But other products that we happen to have here, this is made from sugar cane. When you squeeze out all the juice, what's left is a material, stringy, called bagasse, and they made plates out of it. These utensils here are made from potatoes. It's like spudware.
Wow.
So I'm not sure if it's like cannibalism if you eat a tater tot with it or something, but lots of different containers using all these biodegradable materials. This is a material made from cornstarch. Now, it looks a little ugly right now. That's because it's been sitting in my backyard for 2.5, 3 years. And I'm trying to show that it does biodegrade, but very slowly still, unless it's under the right conditions.
Okay.
So when we have the right conditions, we can do a thing called compost with our food waste and so on. So here we are in our little compost kitchen. I happen to have a lovely supply of stale and unused.
And I can tell that it's stale and unused. Yes,
Yes,
right.
indeed.
Wow.
So we're going to take a little bit of that and a little bit of landscape waste. There we go. And you can even use a little color, a little comic book color into your compost bin. Now you have to add some microbes. Microbes help the process go along, so you add little microbes there. Then you wait a month or two, and voila, out of the oven comes lovely compost. This is an amendment that you can use for your soil, and it closes the loop. The plants grew in the soil, it comes back right back into the soil. That's the best kind of recycling, and this is called compost. Now, that's just one area, but energy conservation is a whole nother area where we can make some headway here. And the first thing to do is to understand a little bit about how electricity is created.
Okay, so electricity. Well, we did a show about this. We did indeed. So one of the things that we learned in electricity and any kind of electricity production is that we've got to have wire, and of course, in order to make the electrons move, we've got to use a magnet, because magnets help the electrons move. So I've got a galvanometer here, and I've got a coil of wire and a magnet. And by moving the magnet in and out, I actually cause a flow of electrons. So it's really important to understand this, to understand how electricity flows. But they do, at power plants, very large magnets that are moving past wires. And in fact, with this little demonstration, we can show that.
Yes,
All right?
indeed.
So I've got here a little Genicon, and it's basically going to move magnets past a wire. So, but we're going to see here that a one turn to one turn may not be the case. So I'm going to turn once and watch what happens on the other one. Whoa. Turn another time. Turn another time.
Doesn't seem to be making it all the way around.
No. In fact, there's some kind of energy loss going on here.
Absolutely. And this is one of our environmental points. The more energy loss you have, the less efficient an item is. So in the case of the power plants, there's huge losses. When you put, let's just say, 1 unit of energy in, very little of it, almost about half, winds up back at your house. And that's because of losses in the actual generator itself and also with the transmission lines. That's not good. So every 100 watts that we save in our house really means that we're saving roughly 200 watts back at the power plant that goes in. So energy conservation is very important. And here's one of the things that you can do at your house.
So this device is hooked up with a couple different light bulbs. There's a compact fluorescent, and then this is a 100 watt equivalent, and then there's a 100 watt regular incandescent light bulb. And this just shows the current that's being used. So this is the amount of flow of electricity going through here. So I can switch this back and forth. Right now we're at about 0.35 amps. But when I flip it the other direction, watch what happens to the meter. And this is when we turn on the incandescent. It shoots way up, which indicates that there's a large amount of electricity that's being used when we're using these incandescent bulbs versus the compact fluorescents.
And that's an important point. In your house, if you have, let's just say, 6 of these bulbs, that's much more efficient than these. That's the equivalent of running this bulb with this blender for the entire time around your house, 24/7, every time those lights are on. Not very efficient. This uses a lot of extra energy using the incandescent over the compact fluorescent. And there's actually other different types of light that are up and coming. This particular light is a LED light, which stands for?
Light emitting diode.
Yes, very good. These are very prevalent now, and they're coming in different colors. It's a wonderful, efficient technology. And if you look at our meter right here, you can see that it's roughly 9 watts. So hugely efficient. One of the other items that a lot of people do not recognize is there's a type of energy called phantom energy. Well, that is attributed to items like this VCR. Phantom energy is energy that most people don't know it's trickling out of their walls, but it's being used all the time. So with the VCR, you notice that we have the clock flashing. That takes energy. We also have a remote control, and this remote control is what sends the signal. Well, this thing has to be on all the time going, where's the signal, where's the signal, where's the signal, using energy. So if we take our VCR and plug her in here, we will see that it's using 6 watts of energy. 6 watts for the entire time that you're out of the house using this. So what is our suggestion? Turn off any appliance that you know you're not going to use because it uses this little trickle charge or phantom charge. And one of the best suggestions we have is to put everything into a power strip just like this. And then when you leave for the day or whatever, you just flip one switch, boom, and
Oh, great, Greg. You shut off the whole studio. Well, until we get power restored, stay tuned to Galileo's Universe. Welcome back. Now that power has been restored after Greg turned out all the lights, one of the things that I was thinking about was, well, we've got this idea of emissions that cars emit, and of course the people under certain circumstances emit. So what's the deal? What's with the emissions?
Well, the emissions are bad, first of all, because it is pollution. But there's a secondary effect that's called greenhouse gases. And certain gases and emissions that go out in the planet have different effects for holding in heat on the planet. So we can demonstrate that with your lovely setup here.
Ah, okay, so I've got in the bottom here, and this is a classic experiment, baking soda and some vinegar. And I'm gonna pour it in here because, not so much because it gives off lots of bubbles, but in the process of giving off bubbles, it also gives off carbon dioxide. Now the carbon dioxide, I'm sort of doing something weird here. It's like, well, wait a minute, why aren't you just pouring in? Well, really what I want is the carbon dioxide, which is heavier than air, to pour out of the bottle as it's produced and to pour into the flask. And carbon dioxide is an invisible gas. I'm gonna put a little more here because I've got still some baking soda on the bottom. And I'm pouring it out. So I don't want any liquid to go in. I really just want to load up this flask with some carbon dioxide. Okay, so I think I probably got enough in there. And it's heavier than the air, so I don't have to worry about it floating back out. Hooked up is these 2 wires. Now these are temperature probes. They're going to measure the temperature. Now, of course, the sun shines on the Earth. The Earth has carbon dioxide. Not as bad as this. This is probably 100% carbon dioxide in here. And then I'm going to turn on the sun. This has got just air in it. This has got carbon dioxide. And then I'm going to start measuring and collecting data here that will measure the temperature. The temperature, both of them are increased, but the one is a little higher than the other. This is indicating that the carbon dioxide is actually doing a better job of holding on to the heat from the sun than our regular air mixture.
Yes, indeedy do. Now the challenge here when you take this little experiment and blow it up to be the planet is that all this sun energy, this is our main source of energy that comes in, this sun energy heats our planet. Well, normally the energy is reflected back out into the atmosphere and out into outer space, and we have a pretty good balance. But what some scientists are thinking now is that we are creating what's like a greenhouse effect. Like when you have plants, you have a greenhouse to keep the heat in the wintertime and you can still grow plants. Well, The same effect is occurring with this layer of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases that go up into the atmosphere. It creates this layer and traps in the heat. And so as we look over temperatures of the Earth over time, it looks like we're in a current increase in those temperatures. Now, some scientists say that this is directly related to a lot of our human emissions as far as pollution and cars and factories and so on. And other people think that this is just a natural cycle of the planet. So
it's controversial,
Yeah.
but the one thing that's known is that the carbon dioxide does hold on to heat.
absolutely, and you're showing it right here. And what effects it has on the planet in the long run is still yet to be seen, but why not try to take care of it right now? So there's, once again, many things that we can do for this. One example is eat less beans. Because believe it or not, when you eat vegetative matter, just like our compost, you get a reaction with the germs and microbes and other little critters, and it creates gases. The main gas of that is methane. Methane is what's part of what's called a greenhouse gas, but methane is 23 times worse than carbon dioxide in trapping that energy onto the planet. So one of the things that you can do as far as emissions go, what do you think one of the biggest emission devices that the average person has?
Their car.
Absolutely. They're getting better and better, and actually lawnmowers are even worse because they don't have the emission controls on them.
Oh,
Yeah.
very interesting. So we should stop mowing.
Absolutely, or use the little push mowers.
Okay.
So with your car, one of the big debates that comes up is it better to run with your windows down or the air conditioner as far as energy goes? Well, the basic answer to that is if you're going locally, keep your windows down, turn your air conditioner off. But at highway speeds, you want to roll up the windows and use the air conditioners.
So this is something actually they could do as an experiment at home to
Yeah.
find out. Of course, the kids won't be driving, but it could be their parents, and they could sort of monitor over the week of driving all with the windows down, and then another week maybe with all their windows up if they were driving on the highway.
That's certainly one way. Another quick way that you can do that is roll your windows down, go 60 miles an hour, roll the windows down and see how many seconds it takes to go down to 50 miles an hour.
very cool.
Then roll up the windows and try it again and see how much of a difference. You should see that the drag has a huge effect.
Okay, good. So there's also one other thing about carbon credits, and that where they're trying to sell carbon credits. So do you have a simple way of explaining those carbon credits?
I do. Carbon credits is a generic term that relates to these greenhouse gases. Some companies that create all this pollution, instead of trying to reduce theirs, they want to pay somebody else to take care of the problem. So if I'm creating a ton of carbon dioxide, for example, I pay somebody to grow a forest, and those trees absorb the carbon dioxide, offsetting. It's a controversial thing as well.
Excellent. Well, we'll be right back. Well, welcome back. Greg, do you have any last-minute comments about how to save the environment?
Absolutely. This is all about reducing our environmental footprint, going on an enviro diet, losing some enviro weight, getting the lead out, taking one foot in front of the other, trying to make a difference for our planet, one step at a time.
You are funny. All right, well, so really this is all about really shrinking, like we did at the beginning of the show, our environmental footprint. So where we would be very large, making it much smaller like that. Well, that's all we have to say about that. Join us next time on Galileo's Universe.